7:03. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. We do have, we have two co-hosts today, just in case my computer does go weird. And I know Sean is going to, I think, talk or show some slides. So I also made you co-host. Welcome back also. Sean, I know you've been traveling, as has Sophie. So we've had a busy couple weeks. Let me share the agenda, which I sent out, which I was posted and then I sent out later, a little later than I meant to. So apologies for that. But let's start with public participation. I see Carol.
Can we take attendance first, Mary?
Sorry.
That's okay.
So by that, you want me to read off the names?
People need to acknowledge they're here.
Okay. So we have Dan, Julie. Is this what you need for me to do, Robin? Robin?
Yep.
Anne?
Here.
Anne? Tom?
Here.
Melissa?
Hi.
Sean?
Here.
Sophie?
Here.
Nick?
Here.
And welcome back, Uma.
Hi.
And Mary?
Here.
I know that Susie's not able to join us tonight. And Rob, I think, has not joined us, at least as of yet. Public participation. I see you on the phone, Carol. Anything you're bringing us today?
Sure, actually, so Carol from 294 Main Street, and I see pumpkin composting is included, and some of you might have seen I posted a request for pumpkins because I am helping at a huge compost area for a permaculture organic food garden to provide healthy food for pantries. And so I waited until the Wakefield had their pickup through the schools. So I posted last night, and I've gotten about 20 people responding and offering their pumpkins. So I'd like to coordinate with anything you guys are doing. And just my 2 cents on the COP26 is I hope that we still land on a more balanced approach as far as food. It's not the cow, it's the how, and need to focus on local food sovereignty, and respect for cultures. For instance, they're bringing back the bison for the indigenous, which is extremely important for their culture. So the focus to me should, and a lot of people, is the focus should be reduction of highly processed food and monocrops, which feed the wrong way to feed the livestock through the CAFOs. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheyenne, I see that you joined. Would you like to say anything? We're in public participation.
Hi everyone. Cheyenne here at Two Vale Road. I don't think I have much comment. I'm just going to listen in. I do have a few, just a couple updates on the food rescue, but that's about it. But nothing, solid yet. It's still in the works. If you'd like to hear about it, I'd be happy to share.
You're welcome to share now, or we can share when we get to sort of student updates.
Let's wait then.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, item 3, approval of the minutes. I know Robin sent out minutes from our last meeting, which was October 14th, and with some edits. Is that right, Robin?
Yes, so I have a motion to approve the amended minutes.
I have some, Robin, I have some amendments that I didn't get to today.
Okay.
Actually, it's in my section where the WGMD board has signed a letter going all the way to the second sentence and starting after aligned with. That should be stated as aligned with our state's net zero goals as outlined in the Massachusetts 2050 decarbonization roadmap.
But it's hilarious and so fun. And everyone a full-size candy cane, and the only rule is you have to keep it hanging on your finger. If it falls,
And can you mute?
right?
So, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And then the next sentence where there's just a couple of words that just need to be added that clarify. So it's they offered assistance to the project on how to do it. T. Betcher asked the ESC, so we're adding in asked the, send a similar letter to the project building committee. So adding the in front of project and building committee.
All right, so I amend my motion to approve the minutes with Tom's corrections to his comments.
I'll second.
All right, Robin,
Yes.
Ann? That was a yes, I think. Unmute.
Mute, unmute. I'm always in the wrong one. I'm going to pass.
Yeah, okay, yes, I approve.
Great. Tom,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Julie,
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't here.
Melissa,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, well, I'm pretty excited about not to have any pressure for one of our newer members, but I'm pretty excited about Sean. He kindly offered to give a little bit of an overview from his experience at COP26 and any perceptions or any thoughts that he had, and including any that might be relevant to Wakefield or just generally your ideas. So I think you should be able to share your screen if you want to, or just talk. It's completely up to you.
Yeah, I'll share my screen here. I hope everyone can see that okay. I just was going to take a few minutes today to talk a little bit about my reflections from having been at the second week of the COP26 UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow. Got back a few days ago from that. Have a few thoughts on local action, and certainly maybe that is the starting point for some conversation as well. And all this is just my own personal views, and not reflecting those of my employer, which is why I was there. So what is COP26? So COP26 is, these UN acronyms are horrible, all of them. So I guess COP at least is pronounceable, but it stands for Conference of the Parties. So it's just the meeting of the parties to the Climate Change Convention. And the other acronym, which is completely unpronounceable that you might see sometimes, is UNFCCC. It's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. That is the agreement and set of agreements that is being discussed at each of these COPs. So COP26 simply means the 26th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. These big COP meetings have been roughly once a year. There was not one last year because of COVID. And so this in partnership with Italy is just kind of showing the fact that one of these hosted meetings got missed. COP27 is scheduled for late 2022 in Cairo, Egypt. And you'll hear a lot about that in the news because a lot of disappointment or people thinking not enough happened at COP26. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Some of that was very explicitly kicked down the road to Cairo next year. So why was I there? So in my day job, I'm a professor at Tufts University. I'm an economist, but an agricultural and applied economist, but I'm actually on faculty at the nutrition school. So what do I do there? I work on issues of environmental impacts of food systems, as well as consumer behavior around food and nutrition. So Tufts University is part of a network called RINGOs, which are the research institutions and non-governmental organizations, and participating Ringo organizations get to send observers. So I was not there as part of any official negotiating delegation or anything, but I was part of the Tufts observer delegation. The reason why I was interested in going is that a chunk of my work has focused on climate change impacts on food and beverage systems. In particular, I've had the opportunity to do some interesting work on how climate change impacts the quality of beverage crops. So I've done work on coffee and tea production systems over the last 10 years. The coffee work based in Costa Rica, tea work based largely in China. So that was part of why I was interested in going. The Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University actually has long-standing relations with actually some of the diplomacy and negotiation aspects. And we have some great people working on energy and environment issues there at the Fletcher School, and they're very much insiders to these COP meetings. I'm not an insider at all, right? I was going to observe, to learn, and to see how discussions were or were not, including food systems, in the larger discussions and agreements around climate change. I'd been as an observer once before, 4 years ago, 2017 in Bonn. That was the year that the U.S. had pulled out of the Paris agreements, the 2015 Paris agreements, which are the main meat of emissions reductions agreements under the UNFCCC right now. So those meetings were not the most exciting because there was not a lot of optimism about what could be accomplished at a global level, given that the U.S. was not there, since the U.S.'s resources and the U.S.'s emissions are the single largest part of the story, right? So, any case, I did also put up here in the upper right, I put the picture of the testing strip for COVID on there to remind me, just in case anyone was curious, what's it like to go to a meeting with 25 or 30,000 people from all over the world in what is hopefully late days of a pandemic, but still very much during a pandemic. I felt pretty safe, although it was definitely outside my comfort zone in terms of being in that large of an event every day from early in the morning to late in the day. But they had mandatory testing. In order to get into the UK, you had to be tested. In order to get on the plane, you had to be tested. And then every day before the conference, you self-administered a test and had to upload the results to a government website in the UK that you then showed the guards before you could even get onto the campus. Amazingly, I have not heard any stories about spread of COVID at Glasgow, or either inside the COP or in the events surrounding it. So I think that worked pretty well. I get tested once a week for work. This idea, like I was tested 11 times in 8 days. It was so, I've now got like a permanent need for cotton up my nose. So it did work pretty well. That was certainly a concern. And it wasn't even clear until a few months before the event if the event really was going to move ahead with a large in-person component. So in terms of what I did there, as well as what goes on there, the main event is these high-level negotiations on, what should the 189 countries that are part of the conference of the parties agree to, and negotiating that. A lot of those sessions where the really important stuff happens are closed sessions. You can't get in. You'd be in this, this massive campus. It's a very large convention center campus with temporary buildings that were built around the permanent buildings to accommodate this large of a group and all the meeting rooms needed, as well as trying to provide for some extra space. While you're in the area, all of a sudden you might hear like 30 or 40 feet marching in motion, and that's always like somebody's entourage, some high-level person, oh, there's John Kerry, or at least his hair, or something else marching by. There's also open parts of the negotiations. I have to tell you, they're not the most interesting thing, at least not to me, because you go in there and people can spend 15 minutes discussing the meaning of a single word and then moving on to discuss the meaning of the next word. So, it's important work. It does have to be done carefully so it has meaning. To me, it's not the most exciting part. One of our doctoral students who has a degree in law said that he found these things very interesting, so what do observers like me do when we're not sitting in on those sessions? There's a lot of scientific sessions, there's a lot of advocacy sessions, there's a lot of networking going on. Think of this as a cross between a research conference and a large conference of interest, but at a very large scale around all things climate. So NGOs from all different countries had presences there. There's this area called the Action area where people were meant to meet for events organized around advocacy. There were other areas, pavilions, where groups, either governments or NGOs, would set up permanent shop during the 2 weeks. And this is all within the secure area. There was a massive non-secured area called the Green Zone where anybody in Glasgow could also go and attend climate-related events. So separate from the secure events that where I spent most of my time. So I spent a lot of time trying to learn as much as I could. Again, I was going there to learn. Tufts was fortunate to have a fairly large contingent of faculty and students. So here in the lower left, this is many of the students who were there during the second week when I was there, some of my faculty colleagues who were there. And here you might recognize State Senator Barrett. We ran into him. He's the main champion of the Massachusetts, the 2021 climate bill that was signed in, I believe, in March, and has some major milestones happening now and through next year, as well as sets out that larger framework of commitments to 2050 for the state of Massachusetts. Up here in the upper right, you can see some of our students got to meet Senator Markey. And then down here, the lower right, this is some of these larger, more the plenary sessions where they're kind of summarizing what they've agreed upon. Those move very fast, but don't say very much. Again, that's where they're kind of adopting the things they agreed to in the other negotiating sessions. So I can't overstate the scale of this, and the fact that you're wearing a mask all day long and that everybody's a little bit confused and out of their element. It's a chaotic, hectic time all around. I'm not sure. I was there for 1 week. I'm not sure how some of my colleagues were there for 2 weeks, or how the folks who are involved in negotiations keep it up for 2 weeks. My main area of expertise is around food, nutrition, and food and ag issues. But just to summarize some of the big outcomes, a lot of discussion in the press, people disappointed. COP26, people were hoping this was an opportunity for really coming up with a framework that would hold us to 1.5 degrees Celsius average of global warming, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's an average. There are huge effects that come from 1.5, but the idea is being that somehow that'll be manageable. But we're not there yet. This goal of limiting warming to that, we're right now at something more like on track for 2.5 degrees Celsius of warming, which will still have a lot of catastrophic effects, according to most models, in terms of things like sea level rise, large-scale impacts on weather patterns. We're not there yet. So there were new cuts that were agreed upon, but not nearly enough. The general, I guess maybe the best hope for sticking to 1.5 degrees Celsius is the agreement to explicitly come back next year in Cairo and try to get further to there, to have pledges that would be implemented by 2030 to hold towards 1.5 and not the track we are on of 2.5 or above. Some of the other things that came out of this year's Conference of the Parties, specific mention of coal. So more than 40 countries at the COP pledged to quit coal completely. The US did not, but did promise to phase out what they call unabated subsidies by next year. So to get rid of public financing for new coal, basically. Some other things that were really important: new offers of funding to lower income countries for investment, either in adaptation or mitigation. Mitigation being trying to stave off warming, adaptation being how are you going to live with the warming that is going to happen and the changes around that. But again, none of that was seen as sufficient, certainly not by lower income countries that are looking for more opportunities for financing the types of investments that they would need to both meet emissions reductions, still be able to pursue human development in terms of improvements of standard of living, and also deal with adaptation projects. Some of the things that got the most, were seen as the most meaningful that came out of the COP26 were not actually the specific things around large scale reductions, since there was generally disappointment around that, but side agreements such as the $8.5 billion pledge to South Africa, which the US is a major funder of, and other countries as well, to basically phase out existing coal and make sure that new energy developments were not going to be coal-based, because South Africa was really on a plan to build more coal-fired plants, and this funding program came with agreements of not doing that and stepping away from some of the current use of coal. So that's really important. And things like that are probably the way forward, more of these multilateral, but not everybody agreements. Also, what got a lot of press, of course, was the China and US methane reduction pledge. My interest is in food systems. Food systems are not a big part of any of the top level formal agreements, really. But methane reduction does include then a lot of focusing on emissions from agriculture and not just energy use, which is, and that's important because the numbers for methane look small compared to carbon dioxide when you look at tons emitted, but because methane has a much higher greenhouse gas potential, has a bigger impact per unit, basically. Methane reductions are extremely important, and agriculture collectively is the largest non-energy sector contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. So things like that are also important. Again, what that'll mean, how that'll play out, because the main teeth of the China-US agreement is to meet in the first half of 2022 and figure out more, right? So again, a lot of talking about, and a lot of agreeing to agree on more things later. Coming to the subtitle of this presentation, which I didn't choose the title, but I'm happy to go with it, and opening up towards maybe some conversations, some thoughts on what municipalities can do in terms of meeting these global needs and contributing to these global agreements beyond individuals' advocacy or feelings about this. Some of the things we do at the local level that are really important: building standards in terms of the energy use, that, in terms of what we require, how we enforce that, how we zone that. That's something, of course, that's very much in local control. Sustainable commuting and making sure that municipalities are contributing to any and all commuting solutions that are going to lower energy use and lower greenhouse gas emissions. Access to sustainable energy, so things like, since in Wakefield we actually have our own power generator power system, so things like the access to that we can pay. Right now, households can choose to elect to pay a little bit more and sign up for 100% completely renewable energy sources, making sure those things are accessible and promoted. Adaptation projects, because there are going to be impacts, and those impacts are felt at the local level in every locality. So what do we need to do in Wakefield, and what do other communities nearby need to do to adapt to the changes we've already been seeing and will continue to see? And then perhaps the most important thing is local infrastructure for electrification, just supporting electrification of the power grid. Like, that's the single most important thing in the United States we need to do to reduce emissions. Electrification, reduces emissions immediately, because just everything we do at large scale, we have better abilities to control the emissions. So the estimate I heard recently is that just, by doing things with electrical power versus oil, gas, coal, average, 20% of the impact, right? Because we're better able to deal with those emissions at large scale. And then, of course, then converting and providing more infrastructure for electrification means that as we bring more renewable energy sources online, it's easier to do those things at scale. So the ability for further reductions to have teeth and take hold is much greater when we already have things electrified. It's easier to do these things at scale than individually. So I'll leave it at that in terms of my prepared comments. I hope that was interesting and not too long or too short, and certainly open to having some conversation around this if we have a few minutes. I can stop sharing now as well.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Myra, I think you're muted.
No, she was talking.
Can you hear me now?
No, I can't.
That was really great, Sean. That was really sort of inspirational. I'm wondering, I know you were there in a listening role, and I can't fully imagine the scope of what's happening there. But I guess what I have in my mind is that there are these very high level negotiations happening, but you're just, like regular people, I don't know, non-politicians are sort of in the room with lots of other people from other places. And so I'm wondering, like, even sort of, do you have ideas, or do you hear ideas about ways to do those things? Or even, we've heard on the news a couple stories about sort of adaptations that communities have made around the world, really thinking about this challenge. And so I don't know if you heard any of those stories or anything that, whether or not it's relevant to Wakefield and our particular challenges, any stories that you heard that were especially inspirational for people who are thinking big about this problem, even in their smaller communities.
So I wasn't particularly focused on looking to collect those stories, but I do, so I had other things I was focused on. So I'm not sure that I have great examples. That doesn't mean they weren't there. There was a lot. There was a lot of representation of Indigenous groups at this COP in particular, and really just trying to. And that was really important for a few reasons, not just because of lack of representation in the past, but because a lot of the immediate impacts are being felt fastest and most severely in many Native communities, particularly in the far north. Just where this average warming, the warming there is much faster than global average warming, right? And also because of some of the resilience strategies that Indigenous communities have had to deal because of often dealing with harsh conditions and having to be resilient in the face of climate change of different scales in the past. So I think some of that's important. A lot of realization of just the massive scale of everything that needs to be done. There's kind of this framework of mitigation, trying to avoid the warming, adaptation, how are we going to deal with the changes that are happening? And remember, a lot of the most severe changes aren't just it's going to be a little bit warmer or something, but rather all the changes that these brings to climate patterns. Whether that's increased drought or increased flooding, or often both, because in a lot of areas, climate change is manifesting itself as changes in the variability of precipitation, right? And so it often means you have droughts because it's harder to capture rainfall that happens in fewer larger events, even if the average rainfall hasn't changed much when you look at a number over a year, right? And we've seen, we've seen things here, and we'll continue to see things in some of our neighbors just a few miles away. We'll see more and more coastal impacts. Those are some of the most immediate things of concern here in Massachusetts. So I mentioned some of the things that might be relevant to Wakefield. The city of Boston has been implementing different building standards, for a while now because of concerns about what, more frequent flooding events could mean for whether it's, moving the electrical system of a large building out of the basement to any number of other things. So I think there's a lot we can do. On the other side of the equation, moving away from kind of the idea of local action, local participation, there's still a lot of political disagreement around climate change and things. And when I often talk to people who are skeptical about climate change, skeptical about some of the needs, I say, look at the insurance industry. The insurance industry cannot afford to play political games, right? Because the insurance industry makes and breaks its fortunes on being able to deal with risks. And I think, so they have to think in a very cold way about, we're going to have to increase premiums here because we can't afford to pay out things if damages are going up. And I think, so that combination of local action and looking at industry, not parties that are dealing with their vested interests, but that have no choice but to look at things in a more calculated way. Those are the things I take the most heart in, which I know sounds weird, like trust the actuaries and as well as the local advocates. But it's because I think that gets us away from some of the posturing, whether it be, I want to show I'm a good person because I'm doing this thing, or, it's in my interest, or I don't like the people who say they want to do things, so I'm going to say something else. I think we need to move away from that and really focus on collective action. I had a cartoon I didn't want to put in, but like if you're driving a bus off a cliff, you shouldn't be sitting there talking about whether or not we should stop driving, right? And we're still having those conversations as opposed to talking about how we can, listening to all voices, but how we can deal with the things that we're already facing and coping with and are not going to go away in our lifetimes.
That's great. Thank you. Carol, go ahead with a public comment too. I know this is an area you're really interested in, so go ahead.
Yeah, it's good. So basically, we all love compost, and compost is the book just came out, Regeneration: How to Solve Climate Change in One Generation. And it's the healthy soils that will bring back the resiliency and reduce the droughts and reduce the floods. And Massachusetts passed the Healthy Soils Act within the Economic Development Bill. So let's all try to figure out how to support all the regenerative and the farmers market, all the local movement towards healthier soils. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts?
I'll just chime in and say thank you. That was great, educational. And from my perspective, the electrification and stuff, I think we are moving well towards that, and we're well aware of those things and working towards that. I think we're in a good position, but like everything else, there's still a lot more work to do. But we are fortunate to have to be in an MLP as well, because we truly can act very locally.
I know I was proud to see that list of possible local actions and think to myself, we've at least started all of them, which I think is a real testament. So that was certainly a proud moment. We've had some of these conversations. There was nothing on there that was like made me think we're really behind the times. Not that we're done. Julie?
No, I think it was great, Sean. Thank you so much. I was actually at COP11 in 2005, and I can imagine how much bigger and more urgent it is. The feeling was in the room. I was just going to say, we're starting, and I'll talk about this a little bit on my town council update, but I think a lot of those things that were on your list are things we're going to be talking about in the master plan that we've started to talk about in Vision 2030. And so I'm really hopeful that we will make some progress on a lot of those items. And I think that this committee can take a role in that.
Great. Well, thank you, Sean. That was really great. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure thing. Happy to do it.
And hold us accountable. Bring these ideas back, because I feel like we want to be continually pushed forward for what we need to be doing.
You might want to think, Sean, I don't know whether you'd be willing to do it, but maybe like do something like that at the library for people to hear about and just start a conversation. It's just an idea. I don't know whether they're meeting in person yet, but just an idea.
I'd be open to it if there are if they're hosting things in person. Again, I don't know. I haven't been in the library in a year and a half, unfortunately, like many of us.
Let me follow up on that, Julie. I spent a fair amount of time in the library, and I know they are using the community room again, at least for youth activities. So let me see if they're doing it for adults as well. All right, I think we want to do a little bit of an update. There is a lot has been. I feel like there's been a lot happening, whether or not it's captured on this list. And so we just want to do a little update on our committees, and then talk a little bit about what we have going on. So, Mary, I'm going to put you on the spot first, acknowledging that having not gotten to it yet is totally fine answer because I'm gonna say that in some of my areas too.
Yeah, no worries. So actually, Sean and I met yesterday, so we're still organizing ourselves, trying to develop a little bit more meat and goals and action plans around those. And I think once we do have something more of substance, we can certainly come back and talk through it. But we will be continuing to meet. You know, we brainstormed a little bit about potentially trying to get a better sense of the Wakefield map of what the green land spaces are and who owns them. But I think we need to do a little bit more legwork around who that owner would be and who would present to us and kind of give us that perspective. So more to come, lots of ideas, lots of great ideas around thinking about really focusing and prioritizing the land we do have and really trying to maximize that. I think that's a nice balance to some of the other priorities going on in the town. And, you know, just again, that connection between, we talked a lot about the connection between green space and health and wellness, and really trying to emphasize that because ultimately that's what this is about. So thank you. That's it. So no significant updates, but just sort of more to come. And Sean, feel free to add if I missed anything as I rambled on.
No, I don't think anything to add.
That's excellent. Thank you. Melissa, do you want to talk about waste reduction?
Yeah, so a few updates on that. Last week, Rob and I had a call with Tim O'Brien, the school facilities director. Anne was there, and Andy Bray about recycling at the Galvin. And right now, the recycling barrels should be delivered pretty soon. And we're just trying to understand how we can get in and do some education there in order to get it all up and running. So Anne was going to touch base with JRM to see if we could get a rep to come in and do some education. And then we wanted to see if maybe we can get some volunteers or faculty to help out with the proper recycling once it gets going. So that's a good thing. And the other thing was we talked about getting composting started up again at the elementary schools because that kind of dropped off when COVID hit. So I know that Tim was going to reach out to principals at the elementary schools, and we're going to reach out to PTOs and to Black Earth to see how we can get that up and running again. And then the last thing, it had to do with the polystyrene and bylaw that is going to be going into effect in January. And so I talked to Erin Kokinda, who's the economic development director for the town, and she's been working on trying to start up a program to help businesses make the switch. So she wants to try to use ARPA funds to help businesses to purchase the new products. So she just started working on that, and she doesn't have a lot of details right now, but I'm hoping that the businesses that haven't switched yet can do that by January, but I don't know.
Do we know if anyone's asked for an extension?
She said that she hasn't heard of any waivers, but I don't know how that process works. Who would get informed?
Yeah, so I talked to Steve Mayo about this on Monday, and I'm a little concerned because I think he's starting to just ease us into the fact that it might be difficult to start in January, but I want to make sure that we understand. I mean, I love to hear that Aaron's thinking about it and perhaps ARPA funds, and I know that he's thinking of things like bulk buying But I think we should kind of keep our ear to the ground. I did say to him that I do not want another blanket, and we can talk about this as a committee, but I just said I personally am against another blanket waiver, particularly for the plastic bags. If Shaw's doesn't stop using those bags, are driving me crazy personally. So I think we should just think about it, and I will ask him to provide us a report on who's asking for waivers, so that we can try to help the businesses make the change.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Around town, I feel like the only plastic bags I see are at Shaw's.
Right.
Many of the other larger corporation businesses have made the switch. Like Walgreens and CVS they were also doing the thicker plastic, and I feel like they have made the switch to paper.
Yeah.
And even other smaller businesses, I feel like aren't doing plastic bags.
Right.
And so
which is why I'm against the blanket waiver, because I asked whether we could make the larger businesses comply back on the original date, and the answer was no. Everybody kind of gets treated the same. So I think this time people just have to apply for their own waivers and show justification. We're not going to ask small businesses to justify, but I think Shaw should have to justify it.
It's really about Shaw's.
It's
But yeah, Julie, if you want to, I can talk to you offline.
Okay.
If you wanna
It's the
work
first I heard of it was this week, but I just kind of felt like, I could just hear the story beginning to be formed, and I just want to make sure that we're aware of it and that we're confirming that if there's actually no materials, no inventory in the country, or prices are 10 times, then obviously we need to look at it.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that we have confirmation of that.
And Melissa, I know that Rob mentioned at one point that he was working on composting at the Interfaith Food, or the food pantry, it's now called the Wakefield Food Pantry. I feel like I'm dating myself in my Wakefield tenure. Is that still moving forward, or do you know what's happening there?
I think they've started already.
Great,
Anne's got her hands up. I think Anne knows.
Yeah.
So they did start. They have a weekly pickup every Thursday. They got a 64-gallon toter that's been full every week. I go by and take a peek and look, and they've been doing really well with it. It started about 5 weeks ago.
Great.
So we at DPW paid for a year contract for a pickup there. So they are good until next November.
Yeah, Rob and I had talked about trying to get that whole building to recycle, because I guess there's not a lot of recycling going on at the Civic Center. So that was another thing we had talked about trying to work on.
Great. That's exciting. I'm going to stop by on Thursday and check out that giant thing. It's a lot of weight.
The Boys and Girls Club should be able to use the bin as well, right? Because it's outside. So really it's for any occupants. Is that right, Anne?
Yeah, that of course. That's
Okay.
fine.
I just know that there's a lot of waste coming out of the food bank, spoilage.
Yeah.
As Melissa said, we're trying to work on some type of cardboard container, a bucket or something, so that they can start recycling more over there.
Okay, good.
Great. So I'll talk a little bit about sort of our community engagement efforts. So I'll start, and then I'm hoping others can chime in. So the pumpkin composting was very successful. We filled up. I mean, I think I have now participated in 2 years in a row of checking the pumpkins into the back of the truck, which is very satisfying. This year it was Rob, and then Jen. Thanks to Jen Betcher for joining us also. I think I think the piles are growing every year. I was especially impressed this year with the Walton, was a sort of gigantic pile of pumpkins. Altogether, I don't know if we got the weight. Rob may know, but it was the truck was, I would say, 3/4 full. So it was a lot of pumpkins. It was pretty impressive. So I think that, I count that as a real success story. I think people really got into it in order to bring their pumpkins to the schools. The cleanups, I'm wondering, Sophie, if you want to talk a little bit about, Sophie is again a star. If you want to talk about Warrior cleanup crew, and then I don't know if Nick or Uma, I don't know if Uma's still on here, if you know, if you want to talk a little bit about the youth council led one as well.
Yeah, definitely. So we've been really working. We set it up as being pretty much the Woodville Elementary School and then high school volunteers that are kind of the main source of volunteering. And I think we have about 50 students from each school, which is going to be great. We're expecting like about 100, a little bit over 100 people to show up. It's this Saturday, 10 to 12, if anyone's interested in coming. We greatly appreciate the help. Our plan is to have about 5 cleanup areas around both the Woodville and the high school area. We're going to section people off and have like high school leaders kind of controlling the little kids and making sure everything goes smoothly. In total, we have 18 sponsors for our cleanup, which is great, pretty much all from local businesses. Let's see, what else? Yeah, we just did a video, kind of like a service announcement that we sent out. I don't know if anyone saw it, but kind of getting really good at recording videos now. It's a fun process, something I didn't know I was going to do, but I do enjoy it. I think that's pretty much it. We're excited and hopefully everything's a success. We actually got our shirts today that are sponsored by Steve Mayo. They look great. I don't have any with me. They're downstairs.
I was going to wear mine as well. I have one as well.
Yeah, no, I have a couple of people that are going to wear them to school tomorrow to hopefully promote it even more.
So this is an initiative that was run by a parent of the Woodville who has been working sort of on this herself, and then in collaboration with Sophie. And so I sort of see it. We had talked about doing a sort of ESC kind of facilitated cleanup in the spring, but I think this is it's a really powerful model, and the fact that it really she's the parent's name is Maggie Schaefer, who sort of has been the lead of this, and she has gotten a lot of interest from the town as well as from businesses and individuals. And so it shows, I mean, I feel like this has been something we've been thinking about for a while, and a little bit of hesitancy, at least from me. I was like, who's going to join me in, cleaning up litter? And there's been a lot of energy around it. And so it's very exciting.
I have one more thing to add. I forgot.
Yeah, of course.
We have a display at the library. If you guys want to go check it out, it's pretty cool. We have some books dedicated to sustainability and recycling efforts, and like a sign-up sheet kind of about who we are and everything like that. We just put it up a couple days ago, so check it out.
And I will say DPW also has been involved in the process. I think it's gonna has the town, I think, has provided the bags, or DPW. And DPW will be picking up, and sort of has been a really great partnership. From I've been a sort of one step removed, but I've been hearing about it at Woodville Pickup, and so it's been just a really great community collaboration, I think, and we're hopeful because there's a lot of litter and trash around in the woods behind the Woodville, and then all the way through like the track area, and then up into the parking lot, sort of above the high school there. And then even back, there's a little spot that really drives me crazy. It's like as you go into Breakheart or as you go into the Vogue, sort of that little patch of woods there. And so I think it's going to be a really great community effort.
Sophie, who's your co-host in the advertisement this time? Who's the?
It's Porter. He's a 3rd grader at the Woodville.
Wow, you guys did great.
Thank you.
Nick or Uma, were you involved in the youth council cleanup and that effort? And can you talk to those?
Yeah, I can. So in a similar effort to what Sophie's running on veterans, they were able to gather well over 100 youth, I would say. We had a great turnout at like the downtown. We had stations all over like downtown Wakefield, specifically at the Galvin, like by like the JJ Round courts, on the basketball courts, just youth council members running stations. And we picked up a lot of trash, similar to the effort that Sophie's running. at schools such as the Woodville, and it was a pretty good turnout. I think the youth enjoyed it. A lot of youth brought their friends along and seemed like everyone was having a good time, and it was good for the community.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to what Nick said. That's just what I heard though. I wasn't able to go because I was touring colleges in Colorado, but I heard that it turned out really well.
Well, I mean, I went with my two kids went, and I accompanied them to the Galvin, and it was a really great energy there. I mean, it was groups of, like, it appeared to me, middle school kids, maybe high school kids, together, and they were, picking up trash and little pieces of plastic that I think was a little bit eye-opening to me, to see that it's not only this sort of knit bottles that we see, and it's not only the cups, but when you look closer, there's very small pieces of plastic. And so I just felt like there, and to see the pile of trash when we were done, it just there were people had found like some rusted pipes that were in the, hidden in that area, as well as sort of just the sort of bags of plastic trash. So it was a very cool thing to do. And what I had heard, the number I heard was 263 pounds of trash collected between the Galvin, the Common, and Veterans Park, which is incredible. You got good politicians, local leaders were there. It was great. So on the idling, I don't have an update. That's on me. I haven't yet followed up with Jen, but I do, especially as we're getting into the colder time of the year, I do think we want to think about a public engagement campaign. So my apologies for that. One thing I put on here just to sort of start conversation, and this is not fair because I didn't give you a heads up on this, but Robin let me know that there been some changes in Massachusetts law around disposal of mattresses and textiles that go into effect early next year. And I'm just wondering if that is an opportunity for, again, public education around environmental, around waste management or impacts there. And so I don't know if it's something that DPW is thinking about or whether we should take it offline.
So yes, so next November, mattresses and textiles will be banned from the waste stream. So one of the issues though we're having is we were interested in getting a grant from mattresses last year and we weren't able to do it. But so some towns around us did get a mattress grant, and they're having some difficulty with, there's not enough resources to recycle the mattresses and pick them up. So one of them's UTech and Lowell.
Mm-hmm.
They were already so busy that Melrose actually ended up having to do a pickup that goes to Milford, Mass. And that location was so busy, it took them months to catch up. So we're very concerned that there won't be a place to bring our mattresses come next November. So I just went to a small DEP meeting about it, and they told us there'll be future meetings to help us so we can figure out what's going to happen. But we're hoping that when people buy a mattress, where they buy it will have to take their old mattress and get rid of it correctly. The problem we see is that Amazon, these online, they're just going to send it to you. I don't think the Amazon driver's taking my mattress out when he leaves. So we're very concerned about what will happen with these mattresses.
That's great. And I didn't realize that it was next November. So there is a little bit of time. But the Simply Recycling, I think it's textiles also, right? It's mattresses and textiles.
Yes.
So the Simply Recycling, is it still working? I know it was very successful to start with.
I'll be honest, it has lost some steam with the pickup that people have to schedule online or call. I think it worked much better when you could just leave your pink bag out. They're also not supplying bags. which I'm okay with because the bag, even though they are recycled, I'd rather they use paper to put them out. But I think that's lost a little steam too, where people had the pink bag, they'd keep it in their closet, they'd fill it, and then as easy as just putting it out with their trash. And now they have to make a call, find a bag, leave it on their front steps, mark it. So we are looking into some other things that we could do about the more opportunities for people to drop. Although I do think Bay State Textiles is awesome. I've noticed their bins have been cleaner, picking up more often. More recently, I go by the Woodville on the way to work, and that had been overflowing a lot of Mondays. And I'm noticing now they're coming more frequently. We had talked to them about coming more often.
Great. Now, if we could work on the books at the Woodville, that's
Yes.
books is still a problem.
Yes. Books are the last two companies that we've dealt with on books have gone out of business, that they're no longer offering the there is a Discovery Books that's around, but they're overwhelmed, they told us, and they're at their maximum even to make the pickups they currently have.
Yeah. All right, that's very helpful. Thank you. Other questions or thoughts on any of our committees that we have started?
I had a question under waste management. So before there was a comment that there may be an effort to restore the food restoration that's a form of waste reduction. So I wonder what that news was.
Do you mean food rescue?
Food recovery?
Yes, what did I say?
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. So I know Cheyenne and Sophie and perhaps Addie were starting to talk about food rescue at the high school. Do any of you, including you, Cheyenne, feel free to chime in. How's that going?
So we met with Cheyenne, but we haven't had the ability to figure out a time to meet with our administration yet. So that's kind of taking a little bit of a slower approach, but we're still working to hopefully set up a time to meet with them and discuss. And then once that we get all their approval, we should be able to start right away and get working on that.
Great. And do you have a sense of what are the products that are, I mean, for the elementary schools, I think it was clear because it was like an elementary school lunch is like a set thing that you get. And so it includes like boxes of raisins and cheese sticks that people may not eat. Do you have a sense of what the potential opportunity is at the high school for sort of that unopened food?
Yes, so there's a bunch of different like options. You can get like a hot lunch, a cold lunch, and I think each comes with its own like kind of additional side. And I think they have carrots, and then they have additional like chips or goldfish that they come with. I'm not super well versed. I've actually never bought lunch, but I don't know if Nick or Uma knows more, but those are kind of like the basics.
Yeah, I've seen it before. I think Sophie was pretty much spot on with that. There's like a hot lunch and a cold lunch every day. There's like varying types of options. There's usually like pizza every day, and then the cold lunch varies from day to day.
So Sophie, my suggestion when you meet with your school administrator is, I know you're trying to think, in the immediate how you can set up the program, but if there's facility obstacles that are making it hard for you as they are now talking with the architects, you need to make sure the school tells the architects that they need spaces to accommodate this. So whether it's a separate room with the fridge and freezer or just shelving or something like that, but make sure they're thinking to address your immediate need, but that it needs to be planned so it maybe is better in the future for the next iteration of the high school.
Yes, definitely. That's a great point. We will bring that up when we meet with them.
And Cheyenne, maybe you can help them kind of get a sense of amount of space that, you would see is what you would need, and, be realistic, but don't oversell it or undersell it, because they're going to squeeze it.
I can speak now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think, it's always good to kind of maybe one day get an eyeball of what's going in the trash. That should provide you with, an idea of the space that you'll need in terms of at least the cold stuff. The dry stuff, I think, is easy to manage. But if you think, of course, of the future with the new building, then, that should go hand in hand as well. But for the immediate, definitely you need the administration and facilities buy-in so that we can all work together as a team to get that going. For at least at the high school. For my end of the new news, I just want to share with you guys, it's still in the works, but a few weeks ago, they shared with me that the clubs are going on now at the Galvin Middle School. And they actually have a couple clubs. One's the community, as you know, and then one of them is the Green Club. So I met with them a couple of weeks ago, and they are looking to implement the food rescue program. At least try that. We did have a conversation briefly with Mr. T, Tetra, and this was over the summer, just more like talking, nothing going on, but they feel more comfortable starting the food rescue and not so much as the compost, just because there's so much logistical issues going on with that and financial. So they want to hold off, and maybe I think that's something that the your group can help with that once, as I think Rebecca mentioned something about that. So last I heard, I think as of this morning, they are gonna basically look for the space and they're gonna try to roll it out by January for the fifth grader. So just one grade, see how that goes, gives them an idea of how much food they'll collect, and then go from there. Once if that's successful, they'll expand a little further past fifth grade.
That's great, Cheyenne. And I feel like you have a whole cohort of Greenwood kids who have been doing this for a couple of years, right? Who are now in fifth grade.
Exactly. They're very familiar with the program. They're excited. It's they have a good, few good kids that they want to, use social media and want to market it, kind of build more support and information about the program at Galvin. They're just excited. I got this whole whiteboard drafted with everything just on my first meeting with them.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that, I was talking to some of the students too, and they were saying that the early release days are probably one of the worst days. So my proposal is, I think in any of the schools, if we're going to do a test day, probably the early release day, which is only once a month, that's where a lot of things are packaged, so they get thrown away a lot more than any other day. So that's something that we can think about as well if we're going to bring it back to any of the schools. I am also in conversation, waiting to hear back from the Wakefield food, just because then if Galvin starts collecting it, I would love to be able to shuffle the food, over to the Wakefield food pantry. So that's behind the scene as well, just kind of logistically how we can make that happen, whether it's having a volunteer from the pantry go to pick it up or, something to that. But that's, again, nothing to announce. It's behind the scene right now. I think that's it for mine in terms of the food rescue.
Great.
Any questions?
And just for some of us, I'm thinking about you, Dan, maybe some others. What the food rescue is really, it's for those prepackaged parts of the lunch that are just getting thrown away, and really trying to keep that food out of the trash and get it to a person who can eat it. And so when we did this last year, it was probably now 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, we were working on this in the elementary schools, and it was a huge volume of boxes of raisins and packages of carrots and packages of apples and chips and all this food that comes prepackaged that some kids just may not like, or may not have time to eat. And so just, it just feels so such an obvious that Cheyenne has really been championing for several years in the Wakefield schools. The other thing I want to just keep on our agenda. So I did connect with Susie around our bench. And so just thinking about how the best place. We have this beautiful bench that our town raised through recycling plastic, and just trying to figure out the right place for it. And so unless you have a plan, and I'm just gonna follow up with the schools and figure out if there's one school, or if we should be thinking about another community place like the senior center or something. But it looks like a very beautiful bench, and I really want to get it out there.
Is there, how many are coming? I thought more than one was coming.
So we got one.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And I
missed
can
the
send a
last meeting.
picture, and then, I think that there was some confusion.
Okay.
We talked about last time is we were
Sorry.
initially
Okay,
expecting
I'll catch
4.
up with you then.
We were expecting 4,
Okay.
but that may have not been a realistic expectation based on Anne's previous experience in the program.
Okay, got it. I wondered. Okay, sorry.
So yes, I may follow up with you too, Julie. I meant to connect with
Okay.
you, and then.
Nope, that's fine.
All right, updates. Julie, do you have updates on, just as you're taking a sip, on green communities?
That's okay. Yes, I don't have great news on, well, I have some good news. Part of it, the good news is that we have finally passed the fleet policy at the town council level. The school committee will be taking it up, as will, I think, the light department shortly. So we actually have almost everything ready to apply to the green communities, except the energy reduction plan, and that has been a bit delayed. It requires some audits. We did finally get MAPC to assist us with it, but it does not, I heard yesterday confirmation that we will not make the December 31st deadline, which is hugely disappointing, because it probably means we'll get, we'll probably be able to make the application mid next year, which will put funding off until late next year. But the good news is that we are on our way to doing it, and we will, and it doesn't mean that we can't start some of the really good things. It just means we won't be an official member and get some of the grants yet. So that's where we are on it. And I don't know whether Tom has any more updates than that. And Jen Calais has been taking the lead on the energy reduction, and we were running in different directions yesterday, but that was the news update that I heard.
Nope, other than, the gas and light board will be taking up the vehicle policy in our next meeting.
Yeah, so it's still on track. It's just not, we were cutting it too close, I guess, for December 31st. So we'll be in for the next year.
Great. The high school building, I don't know, Robin, if you want to speak to that, or I can speak secondhand to how that's going.
Maybe we both, because I think we have different perspectives, although I've had a nice opportunity to meet with some fellow architects / spouses from this committee on the visioning meetings. The visioning is, at the moment, is mostly about the educators and coming up with a plan in terms of that school vision, but they do regularly talk about the infrastructure and facility and sustainability. So it is mentioned every meeting. So they've had 3 of the 4 visioning sessions, and then they also held a community-wide meeting. I don't know if anyone knows how many people attended, because it was a type of format that you couldn't see the list, but from the vibe of the facilitator, it sounds like it was really poorly attended, which was a big disappointment, because I don't like to hear people feel like they didn't have an opportunity to learn more when this was available, and they made comments that the names they saw on the attendance list are people also attending the visioning session. So when there's more, I think we all can try to tell everyone we know to attend. They don't necessarily, it's meant to be a dialogue, but if people are uncomfortable talking, just having them listen to be better informed, especially when it comes later to, we start seeing some really large, costs, people knowing how they got to be there would be really handy. So things are moving, at a normal pace, I should say. And there are, even if you don't attend any of the meetings, the website for the project has a contact me. And so they are seeking, comments and opinions in all formats. So encourage people to speak up for what you're passionate about, whether it's electrification or open space as part of the school or whatever, wherever you want to speak up.
Yeah, so I mean, my husband is on the committee, and so I hear it secondhand. You know, there is one left. I think I've heard nothing but really great feedback on the sessions that they've had. They seem to really be listening. It's a lot of voices that are in the room. Each one has its own focus, but I really would encourage people to join, either join the next visioning session, which initially they said you had to attend all 4 to be in the breakout rooms, but that's not my understanding of how they're working. And so I think there's one more on Tuesday night. Or some of the open sessions, because I just get the sense that there's a lot to work through. I've never been through this process before. There's a lot to work through. Sorry, the next meeting is on November 30th in the evening. But I just really think the more voices that we can have in the room is great for all of these issues, I think. So
and just to give a little feedback, they are still at the very high level. There's no pencil to paper in terms of shapes or anything like that. They're seeking opinions and priorities, and to create that work plan of which then the design team can work. Do people have
Robin,
questions?
Is it fair to say that they're like, I mean, in some ways they're defining their priorities, right? And I feel like if we feel strongly that this needs to be as green of a building as possible, it's easier to get that feedback heard loud and clear now, as opposed to when the design is done.
Absolutely. The most cost-effective way to get everything in is for them to know it sooner rather than later, for so many reasons. So whenever there's feedback and it's on that list, I always type it in of all sorts of different sustainability and air quality and wellness and those kind of focus things. Teachers are speaking about, the way they teach, the operations of schools. Wakefield did a great job getting a lot of variety of teachers, different departments, as well as I was in a breakout session was it last night or Tuesday? I don't know, with the head of facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So I had fine arts, world languages, facilities. And so, everyone, and some were new to the school system, some were not. So it was great to get, that wide variety.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. Go ahead, Julie.
I was just going to say, and I kind of think of this on a number of fronts. I'm wondering whether this committee shouldn't write a formal letter, saying that we want not only sustainability, but I love what you just said about spaces for food rescue and composting and recycling. And, if there is kind of a list of things that we would want, we probably should go on record and get it into somebody's hands. And I don't know when the right time Robbie can probably tell us when the right time to do that is, but I think we should be a formal voice. And I will say on a similar note, the vocational school is being built. We just voted to spend a lot of money on that, and they're planning on hooking up natural gas to that project. And I know the light department's written them a letter, but I'm wondering again, whether this committee should say, we really encourage the vocational school to explore all of its options and be as green as possible, and perhaps not look at natural gas, and encourage them to work with the light department to find alternatives. So I just, we haven't played kind of that advocate role yet, but I'm wondering whether we should. I know it's hard because we only meet once a month and it's hard to get the language together, but I think that we've grown into a respected committee that's to be reckoned with, and we might want to go on record sometimes.
I can draft up some letters with some help, and we can bring it back to the next agenda to vote on them. I think that's what we'd have to do is vote on it, and then we can submit it.
Hey, Maya, I would be interested in doing something like that.
Yeah?
Yes.
You want to try to draft it, Dan?
Yes.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you. We can connect offline, and I know we can use the gas and light department has sent a letter to the Vogue, and we can use that
Yep,
as an
might
input.
just be as simple as saying we agree with this or
Yeah.
something. We should probably circulate that letter around to everybody as well.
Yes.
Is this, sorry, are we talking about a letter for the vote or a letter for?
I was thinking both.
Yeah.
Both, a separate letter.
I think in the very near future, we should be sending a letter to the vote from this committee as well. And I would CC everyone that was on the gas and light letter, which was sent from both the board and the department itself. It was a joint letter. We did not get any response from that letter other than from town councilor Julie, which was a little bit disconcerting from our side. We are looking for the vote to potentially make other decisions around the project. So I think that the more voices, the louder, potentially we can have them tip the scales on that. During town meeting, the building committee there seemed to think that they were, on being a very efficient building, and then, stating that they're LEED Silver certified. And, as Robin's presentation a couple meetings back is, it's kind of the bare minimum, and you almost build a new building and you get LEED certified. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for the VOC. It may be harder because they're much further down the path than our high school, but certainly I think that a letter from this committee sooner than later it would be beneficial.
And I want to thank you for reading your letter out loud to town meeting. I thought it was great for folks who may not have seen it to be aware of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I read the first portion of it, not the kind of the detail stuff, but I think,
You might want to put it in the newspaper too.
yeah, I'm working on getting Gas and Light to actually publish it at the moment.
Good. I think it's important.
Yeah, agreed.
Great. Thank you. Students, any other updates? Addie or Nick or Sophie? Uma?
I don't think I have any updates. I do want to apologize for getting here late. I did think the meetings, I thought the meeting started at 7:30 and then I was at work, so I joined as soon as I could. But
not a problem.
Yeah, I think Sophie covered everything with the food rescue. I will say that our recycling club admin, Miss Lopez, is very eager to get started with that. And she does want to add composting. She's very passionate about composting. But yeah, I think the next step for that is meeting with the administration, which Sophie and I will get on ASAP. But yeah, that's about it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any additional updates either.
Neither do I. I think Sophie pretty much covered everything.
Great.
Yeah.
So Susie's not here for the school committee. So Julie, anything to add?
I don't have a whole lot. I will, not so much from the town council, but I did sit in on the Board of Health meeting, and Melissa and I were on an earlier Board of Health meeting. They are taking up, and they're just waiting for a final draft. They will likely sign something asking the state to do a full comprehensive health assessment on the Peabody Peaker plant, which the light department is buying into. So that's not necessarily town council, but that's just something that's happening in another committee on environment. I do think that we have allies in the Board of Health on environmental and wellness issues. So that's another thing that we should keep in mind. So they'll probably take that final review at their next meeting. And I was just looking at it, let's see here.
I asked Steve Mayo to have Wakefield sign on to a letter urging the governor, the Secretary of Energy, actually to set net zero emissions, strongly support the commitment to achieve net zero emissions. I'll circulate this around. Oh, it's the true net zero stretch code. So to set the net zero stretch code, it's something that Wakefield would still have to vote in town meeting, but I was pleased that he was willing to sign it to express Wakefield's interest in having the state set some standards for that. So that goes to what Sean was talking about earlier in buildings. I think that's it. The only other thing, again, not necessarily town council, but the Safe Streets Working Group, which is a grassroots group that I work with, they're trying to get a little bit reorganized. I think they're going to probably start to send somebody to this meeting just to listen in from a public perspective. And if there's anybody on this committee interested in working with them, there's some overlap. They're going to work on some idling things too as well, Myra, and try to do some, again, wellness and bike and outdoor type things in the spring. That's it.
Great, thank you. Tom?
Just around the project updates, we did solicit out for the community solar. That solicit process has come back. Unfortunately, we only had one contractor bid on that, and that bid was much higher than we had anticipated. We are, because there was only one bid, we are allowed to negotiate with them. So we're not sure what the status of that project will be at this point in time. And then just kind of circling back around to what Julie just stated, and Sean, around kind of the electrification and beneficial electrification and the net zero stretch codes and bylaws and things, and all of this stuff kind of needs to be at the bylaw level at time of new construction developments to electrify heat pumps, EVs. So we should be really, as a committee, I think, spearheading getting these things codified, because they're going to make the biggest impacts. Especially when developers are building these projects, whether it's single family homes or multi-residence, that's where we're going to get a lot of impact. While the energy efficiency programs that we have, rebates and incentives to convert existing, just are not going to get it done to meet our goal, our state goals of that have been set for 2030 and 2050. So I think we need to be, as a committee and a town, be proactive. And I think one of those ways is to get these things into the building codes and into our bylaws. I know that there's a lot of projects being done now, and I'm sure there's a lot of projects going to be coming online in the near future in the planning stages. So I think that just like we did with the plastic bag ban and all those things, hopefully we can potentially work, form a committee and subcommittee, and get these in next year's town meeting, whether it's spring or fall meetings.
I think some of those will come up in the master plan as well. And there's a advisory committee to the master plan, but to the extent there's going to be public meetings, I think we need to show up and ask for those things. And here again, I think a letter from the ESC to Zoning Board of Appeals saying we think these are best practices, even if they're not codified. It doesn't mean they have to do it, but they got a lot of the things they ask for. So we might want to think about carrot and stick too.
Agreed. Yeah.
Julie, the master plan subcommittee, what the title, or what are they tasked with? I'm sorry.
So they're tasked with coming up with a master plan, which I guess hasn't been done in Wakefield in maybe 20 years. It's under the jurisdiction of the planning board. And then there is an advisory committee. It's being managed by MAPC, which is what Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. I think there will be more information coming out. They just set the committee and the planning board just got started. But that's kind of designed to match up with Envision 2030, where people talked about what kind of town we want to live in. And then this is really to think about how much development we want and what that development will look like and where it will be and how it will be built.
And I know this is probably impossible to know, but at what point are choices or decisions being made around the way that the new federal infrastructure bill trickles down to Massachusetts? And I'm thinking there's a lot of money in there, for example, for electric car infrastructure and some of the things that we've already started.
I am not sure. I am sure that the Massachusetts Municipal Association will be holding a lot of seminars on that. We still have the $8 million in Wakefield as well from the ARPA, from the Recovery Act. So between the infrastructure funds and the ARPA funds, we should, as this committee, we should really be paying attention to that as this committee, because we want to make sure that, we might be able to get some funds spent for good things. Like I think Melissa already said, might be able to help us implement some of the reduced waste things. So I think it's a little early. I've seen lists. Maybe Ann knows more than I do, but I've seen lists of what's coming to the towns, but I don't think they've divvied it up yet.
I don't believe they have got the list out yet.
Great. And Ann, any updates?
I just have a quick update. We did try a fall composter and rain barrel sale. It wasn't as successful as we had hoped, but we did sell about 20 composters and rain barrels, which was great. Some were going for gifts. So we will have another one in the spring, and then we'll try another one in the fall with maybe a little longer sign up. And maybe a demo, so people could come and demonstrate. We'll show a demonstration, and then we'll have a month or so, and then they can purchase one. And that's it.
And do you have a sense of how many more Black Earth kits? Are there any kits left, or are they gone?
There are 20 kits left.
All right, I feel like that's the Christmas gift, maybe.
Absolutely.
Our next meeting is set for December 9th. Does that work for folks? As far as you know, December is always tough. If you anticipate a problem, just let me know and we can look at other dates. But unless anybody, and this one we moved, I know, because a fair number of people were traveling.
Myra, I have that as the next potential high school public forum night, but I have a TBC next to it. So this would be the second to 2 for this stage of the design process. So if it is an overlap, I would ask that we move as a way to let folks on this committee and as a way for us to publicize and promote others to attend.
Okay, I can try to confirm that too, Robin, but if you hear that confirmed for sure, let me know. In which case we'd be looking probably at the 3rd Thursday of the month. Any other matters not anticipated? This was great. I feel like we had I think we heard from everybody in the committee today. So that was really great. Thank you. And I just feel like there's just a lot of energy. I feel like there's a lot of great things happening. And I hope to see some of you potentially on Saturday at the cleanup. And if not, we'll certainly share some pictures and really think about how we can leverage the momentum for the cleanup in the spring.
When people are done cleaning up litter, the farmers market is on Saturday as well. So you can get your local produce as well as pick up someone else's trash.
And you can also, yes, and appreciate what is now a much cleaner Veterans Field.
Yes.
And the lake area there. I think I haven't checked it out yet, but I'm pretty excited to go down there.
And if anybody has kids to need vaccinated, we've got the COVID vaccination clinic all day Saturday.
Sounds like a fun day.
It's gonna be a fun day.
All right.
Get out there.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great. I'll just go down my screen. Julie?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Dan? I think that was a yes, but you're on mute, but I saw.
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Thank you again, Sean. That was a really great presentation.
No, thank you for the opportunity.
Melissa?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
And me, I'm a yes. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.